Ross Chastain used the wall all the way around this racetrack. Logano has been the class of the field.
Check out the big brain on Brad.
Yeah, I need to change my underwear.
With the carnage of the drafting tracks behind us, it's time to get into some real cup racing. We go ahead into COTA, doing some road course racing. We got some ringers. We got some shockingly aggressive lines on drivers that really haven't done much. And as you can tell from my horrible voice, I'm doing my Jordan flu game here, but Brian Twining is here to help carry the ship and get us where we need to go. Brian Twining, how the hell are you?
Yeah, no, it sucks that Mr. Kyle over here got the sickness that's been going around pretty much everywhere. But, you know, we made it through Daytona and Atlanta pretty unscathed. I mean, both Kyle and I, when we go and we review our betting cards, we're doing fairly well so far in the year after having actually placed bets on two of the most unpredictable races. And as he said, we had the COTA where not only do we have a new track design, we have new tires apparently that are supposed to have more wear in them. As Kyle mentioned as well, we got more ringers in the field and Connor Zilisch, who, as you see, when we go to the betting odds, very questionable decisions by the sports books. And we get Dinger the Ringer in his regular ride full time, first time in 2025. So
Yeah,
there is a lot to get into when we start looking at these odds, and even the sports books clearly don't have a good handle on what to expect.
Yeah, so you're going to be able to make some decisions. If you're like, I'm not betting some of the guys at the top, the road course ringers, you're going to get some opportunity to get action on guys you really want to bet. As Brian mentioned, the Dinger price, which seems to have gotten obliterated in a few different places, which I think is interesting. We'll look at his price kind of across the board. But I guess before we get to this week, let's get back to last week. Let's talk some Ambetter Health 400. Atlanta was really, really fun. It was super annoying that Carson Hocevar existed and just kind of ruined a lot of stuff that I was really excited about.
Stop right there. Carson Hocevar is such a breath of fresh air, as he is one of the very few handful of guys that clearly has that I do not give an F mentality on
No, and I
track that he
appreciate
knows.
that, but he doesn't know what he's doing, and that's a
But
problem.
he does. He got to the front because of that aggressiveness. And
Yeah.
the only person that suffered because of his moves was Ryan Blaney, who he got too far right in the rear bumper. Everybody else just kind of bitched out and ceded way to him because they got afraid that they were going to wreck. I mean, think about it for a second. The reason why Joey Logano and Ricky Stenhouse wrecked, because neither one would give up their position. And quite honestly, like when you look at that, that's just guys racing extremely aggressively to stay up front and have track position at a race where it's become important. Whereas in Atlanta, Kyle Busch complaining about Carson Hocevar, what was Kyle Busch doing? He was backing off. He could have done something to prevent Carson Hocevar from taking the spots from him. And when you go to the last lap of the race, the move that Carson Hocevar made to take that 3 wide, there is not very many people in the Cup garage that are going to do that and have just a complete reckless abandonment for everybody around them. But it was a race-winning move potentially had things stayed green. You cannot.
He reminds me of my buddy when I go golfing that like sometimes he'll pipe it 300 yards right down the center of the fairway. But there's other times, and oftentimes when I'm standing in front of him, where I need to go hide behind a tree because I literally do not know where it's going to end up. Could it hit me in the head? Sure. Could he do it exactly like he's supposed to? Absolutely. And Carson Hocevar is that guy. So he's doing stuff, but like I'm not even sure he thinks he's got that iRacing sim where he's like, well, just hit the restart button if this doesn't work. And well, Carson, it didn't in fact work. So go back to the main menu and hit restart because yeah, I don't know. It was frustrating. I thought it was hilarious. The memes afterwards.
Sure.
The airplane one where they're shaking the guy in the
Oh
seat.
yeah.
Just over and over. It was, I don't know.
Yeah,
This,
and then just I kind of wanted to ask you too about the end of the race. I mean, there was a lot made of the caution being thrown. I know I tweeted out about it. Like, I don't even know if it was so much the fact that they threw the yellow as much as it was we've gone back and forth just to begin this year, and there
yeah,
was no like predetermined decision as to how this was going to be officiated. And I understand Denny's take when he was basically saying that every driver in the field would rather side be on the side of caution and safety for your fellow driver as opposed to just letting it go green to race to the finish. And I'm fine with that. Had that been kind of the call the night before in Xfinity, like the Xfinity wreck from what I saw was way worse than what
yeah.
happened with the Cup guys. And guys aren't just going to floor it and try to drive through somebody spinning in front of them, wrecking when they're in 20th place.
Right. Well, and that was, I think my frustration is, I think, you know, when you're playing basketball with some friends or like in like a rec league and you think you hear a whistle or you think there was a foul and someone keeps playing and everyone
Yeah,
else is kind of just standing around. That's what it felt like. It felt like the flag was thrown and like some people were trying and some people weren't.
exactly.
And we literally the day before when we were recording, there was carnage as you mentioned, but they let them race to the finish. A week ago at Daytona, there was carnage, but they let them race to the finish. Why are we changing it 24 hours after doing the same thing?
Yeah,
That's what I don't understand. I don't care if it's one way or the other as much as I want consistency. And if you're going to let everybody race to the end, even if Christopher Bell's the guy that gets there, I don't care, but I need him to race to the end, or I need every race to be called when you throw the flag. Like you can't just arbitrarily make decisions.
Well, and then I think too, like I tweeted out, I've seen many other people reference this. Maybe NASCAR needs to adopt a like track specific area caution scenario for
Yeah.
these end of race situations, kind of like in F1 where on the road courses they have cautions in certain sections of the course for a guy spinning. At a super speedway, for instance, or at an oval, you throw the caution in turn 3 and everybody that's coming up to that has to slow down. But anybody that made it through it, you stay green
Yeah.
because it's still going to take a massive amount of time for you to get back to that area, especially when it's the last lap. And as soon as you cross the finish line, anyways, you throttle down.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah, I
I
don't at speedways especially, I think they should have a special rule and like when that crash happens behind you, you keep racing and then the everything kind of ends. Like I just
or everybody that's like in the direct vicinity of the
yeah.
wreck or behind it, caution. Everybody has to slow down.
Yeah, but then
But if
people
you're
are gonna
but if,
like
if it's
but then
in your
Carson
rearview
Hocevar is gonna
mirror,
keep driving and be like, I didn't see the flag. I don't know.
oh, okay, well then they can officiate that. But I mean,
Yeah.
in the sense of what just happened in Atlanta, the 3 guys that were racing for the win weren't anywhere close to being part of that
No.
wreck.
I would have loved to see them actually get a chance to race for the win.
We were in line to see basically an exact replica of
Mhm.
what we saw last year. They
Yeah.
all 3 of them were on their throttles, and Hocevar is not lifting. Kyle Larson, who by the way, had Kyle Larson been making the same moves that Carson Hocevar was doing the entire race, you wouldn't have heard a fraction of the complaining that you did about Carson Hocevar. In fact,
Yeah.
Kyle Larson wrecked the best car of the day in Austin Cindric. I don't see outrage there.
Yeah, I mean, as someone who bet Penske, I was very outraged when Blaney crashed and then he was back up.
I
Cindric
mean,
crashed, Logano crashed. So
hand
annoying.
up. I had Kyle Larson and Penske, so I
Yeah.
mean, I wanted them to race clean to the end because either way, that was going to be a good result for me. So the way the race ended sucked. I still profited,
Must be
but still,
nice.
like going back to it, race to the green, figure out a way to officiate cautions behind them or something
Yeah.
for safety reasons.
I
But
think you
we
just
should be
make
finishing
decisions.
races with green flags.
Yeah. Either it's safe enough to keep going and everybody goes, or you reset the field and you race to the end. Like there's like arbitrary. Well, on Daytona we'll do it, and at Atlanta we won't, and maybe at Vegas there will be something that we'll have to be concerned about. I don't know. I was it was a little bit of a frustration to what should have been an amazing race and an amazing finish. So, but overall I can't complain. I had a lot of fun watching Atlanta, and it was nice to see Mother Nature not make herself known, which was
Very
also a
true.
big,
And
big positive.
I will go on record. Atlanta, second best track on the schedule.
It's up there. It's certainly up there. Was
Kansas
Kansas
is
the
number
number
one.
one? Yeah, I don't know. I have a soft spot in my heart for Vegas, but that's just because
Well,
we go there all the
yeah.
time. But yeah, that would be a good discussion. Let us know in the comments. What is your favorite NASCAR track on the schedule? Like, you don't say like Bowman Gray or somewhere that
Yeah,
NASCAR
don't give
doesn't
us
go consistently.
Kentucky or yeah.
Yeah, pick somewhere that's on the Cup calendar most years. Yeah, to be interested to know. All right, let me present my screen here. We can run through the betting. We can run through the grid rival pick, which shouts to us, cash to pick them there.
Yeah, I apologize for the extremely long monologue for compared to what we normally do here on the recap show. But yeah, there was a lot happened at Atlanta.
No, I think it's good. I think it's good discussion and conversation. And as we talked a little bit about in the pre-week stuff, definitely a lot more predictability, I guess, but still super speedway nonsense at the end. And then that's kind of what made it. So Briscoe sucks, and it's just not going to be what I had hoped he could be. It looks like winning the pole at Daytona is going to be like the best part of his season. We'll see.
Well, especially
Um,
with him getting that points penalty after
yeah.
Daytona, like they are in it for they are in for it the rest of the year for sure.
The Bowman bet I'm happy with. He was definitely in contention. He looked really good. Eric Jones, whatever. The Toyotas were kind of not great despite Christopher Bell winning. And so I don't feel bad about that.
I think 2311 was really good.
Yeah. Yeah, but like I don't know. I don't know. Chase was fine. I was happy to have him on the card at his number. I think he makes sense. Chastain was legitimately there at the end, had a chance. In the Team Penske bet, obviously we didn't win, but we had the top 3 cars in the betting
Yeah.
odds. We got that at a number before it completely flipped to minus 200. Although if you were smarter or an active shopper, and we'll kind of talk about this, you were able to find like buy one of Cindric, Blaney, or Logano to win at like 2-1, even though Team Penske was minus 200. The one thing to remember with NASCAR is they're all independent markets. They're not tied
Yep.
together. So while we know this and that, and these teams are correlated and whatever, these are completely meaningless markets to the bookmakers, and they take money on bet number 1645, and they move the market accordingly. So
Yeah.
remember that, and if you want to get action on something that has moved, go look for ulterior ways to get basically the same bet, or a very similar version of the same bet. Elliott over Keselowski, obviously cashed that. And then Chastain over Gibbs. We had some Gibbs exposure that we both took just because of the number, like right before the race. And I don't know, Tyrone's just between Tyrone and Briscoe. I just make dumb decisions with those two guys. I just can't help myself.
Well, I'm on written record and on recorded record during one of Chris Wormey's shows here of saying that I believe Carson Hocevar will get a win before Ty Gibbs. And I'm not saying that Hocevar is necessarily better than Gibbs because I think he's an incredible racer, and I don't take too much out of the super speedway racing. But yeah, until we see Gibbs, who came in to the Cup Series with a ton of pressure, having to being the grandson of Joe Gibbs, the team owner, a lot of hype of a guy who dominated the Xfinity Series. He just hasn't been able to close the deal, and until that happens, it's hard to want to back him at any place. As we a little bit further down the show here, as we look at odds for even this weekend, like as good as he was last year, I don't know if I can get there with him this year yet.
Yeah. So you rode with Bowman, Cindric stage 1. I thought you were going to crush that. I
Oh,
thought
that was
gonna
so frustrating. Damn, Josh Berry.
Kyle Larson, obviously that was a great bet. We'll talk about him more in a minute. You had Elliott over Keselowski too, so we both crushed that. You had the Team Penske to win. It was a good bet. I still stay with it. The Ross top 10 at plus 225 was really nice. That was a nice value. Shouts to ESPN for hanging that out there. And Spire over FRM plus money, go for it. So Brian's 4-9 on the season, up a unit. Good job, Brian. Look at us, make it through the drafting track with green next to our name. Then I'm obviously 4-13, up almost 9 unit, 8.5 units, thanks to Chase Briscoe and his poll.
Yeah, it's very nice when you could secure a 30-1 poll bet.
Yeah, it doesn't suck.
Open
It
the
does
year.
not suck. So,
Yeah.
and I thought we were gonna get Josh Berry on Saturday.
Oh man, he was the only non-Penske guy that I thought had a shot.
I need a good number, but he was 4th. All right, let's look at. So this is our green, white, checkered. Obviously presented by Win the Race, where we break down our favorite DraftKings thoughts. I wrote up a bunch of stuff and actually some pivot plays, including the aforementioned Kyle Larson, who was really, really good. And then we put our Grid Rivals pick slips in here, and we actually crushed this one. So McDowell better than 16.5. Kyle Busch the plus the 2.5 against Logano, which there was times where I felt great about it, at times where I felt like, oh god, this is going to go poorly, and then kind of worked itself out. And then Gilliland over Gibbs, so cash that was nice. And then the longer one, obviously, Mi Amigo had probably the worst showing at Atlanta of all the drivers. It was really frustrating. Even when he was racing well, he was racing poorly. And then Priest beat Eric Jones. So, and then we put our favorite bets and put some episodes. We put our full betting card, all that stuff. So AOP podcast.substack.com, completely free to join. Shows up in your email inbox every race day with all of our thoughts that you can either follow or fade, and just some extra thoughts, especially on those weeks where maybe you don't have time to catch Sunday's episode and you want to wait, what was that bet they had on the card?
Mm-hmm.
It's a great opportunity for that. So let's review our DraftKings lineups and talk about those. Kind of a frustrating day from DraftKings. Obviously, this was our best lineup, which had Bell and Hamlin in it, so that ended up working out really nice. But it had Suarez, and Gibbs. But the Chastain call worked out, so it ended up being decent enough, and winning a little bit of money. Kyle Busch, Eric Jones, Daniels. Yes, we had a lot of Suarez love, which, I mean, obviously, if you go Trackhouse, and Chastain was great, but
yeah, and I will say we made the wrong decision on the Penske garage because it probably should have either been Cindric or Logano based on how many laps that they wound up leading and just the overall strength of the car. Because Blaney, from the get-go, he kind of fell back rather quickly.
Yeah. And we talked about it when we were building the Larson lineup. We were like, Blaney, I'm gonna do it with Logano too, just to make it balanced. But probably should have done it with Cindric. Maybe that would have been a little better. Although it all ended up having not the greatest day, so it didn't really matter. Byron's day was super frustrating too, because he was doing awesome in stage 3, and then he didn't. So,
well, that was the result of Kyle Larson squeezing Austin Cindric up into the wall, and then
I'm gonna blame Carson Hocevar for that one.
And that's pretty much what the entire NASCAR fan base is doing. Is everybody's just ignoring the sport's supposed best drivers' mistakes that he makes and just looking at Carson Hocevar.
Works out pretty well for Kyle Larson, let me tell you.
Oh my god.
Yeah, it's the same lineup. So. All right. Any other Atlanta stuff you want to talk about before we turn our focus to COTA?
Yeah, no, I think it's really important to note that most of the drivers that they asked about the new Atlanta and all that, even post race, we hit on this a little bit before we got there. They're very excited at the way that this is racing. It is kind of, you've heard multiple drivers mention that it kind of races like old Daytona before they repaved it and before the Gen 7 car, where handling actually matters. And you kind of saw that on Sunday, where if you couldn't hold the bottom, you were losing spots, and it was easy to lose 3-4 spots in one corner if you got squeezed into the middle. And, outside of the end of race scenario where we saw the 2 wrecks because guys are racing extremely hard, I thought the racing was really good. Like, it was pretty clean for the most part. And outside of Ricky Stenhouse, not clear, wrecking Chase Elliott and eventually leading to Brad Keselowski's day finishing. I mean, thankfully it helped us cash the Elliott over Keselowski bet. But outside of that, I don't think there was any stupid, like, traditional super speedway type wrecks outside of guys just getting extra aggressive. So I'm really excited to see what it looks like in the fall.
Most of our existing, it was perfect.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, no, it was really fun. I'm really happy I really enjoyed the start to finish. And like I said, no Mother Nature delays was also very nice. All right, let's talk this week because there is a lot to get into. Shane Van Gisbergen, 5. Connor Zilisch, 650. I also have MGM up where Van SVG and Shane are the same. Also pull up Fanduel on my other screen. Brian has a few up, but unfortunately our friends over at the Odds Checker and Action Network and just their screens aren't. I would love for someone to design, and if you know a good one, let me know, where it shows you all the books and all the drivers and it's actually up to date. And like now, Odds Checker had it for 2 weeks. Now they're done apparently. But I'd like to be able to compare and shop all, I think it'd make it really entertaining for the people on the tube of you. Let me adjust this actually. Anyways, but we're going to use Caesars because it seems to be the most consistent, at least across the board. You can get $750 on Zilisch over at FanDuel if you really want that. It's a good week to shop. I was talking to Brian a little bit before. The non-drafting tracks tend to be a little more simpatico with the numbers, especially post qualifying. But there is opportunities like FanDuel has Byron at 9, and he's $750 at Caesars. So if you have multiple books, always good to double check. But Brian, Bell, Reddick, Byron, Zilisch, and SVG are inside 10-1. You can get Bell at 10 at FanDuel if you really want it. But I guess of those kind of handful of guys, we have a couple ringers. We're getting a big boost because we're at a speedway. Obviously, there's track changes that we don't really know the impact of completely.
Yep.
What are your thoughts on kind of this range? And is there anybody that you're gravitating towards?
Well, obviously, as you just mentioned, we got a shorter track. It sounds like they're bringing a new road course tire that is supposed to have more fall off. And there is weather in the forecast for Sunday, which may bring rain tires into play. So there's a lot of stuff that goes into this. So it'd be really hard for me to play. I mean, it'd be really hard to play Connor Zilisch at plus 650. Look, first time in a Cup car. I don't care what kind of training, sim work, all that garbage, how good he was in the Xfinity race at Watkins or what he did in the truck race last year. Like, you can throw all that shit out the window. This is a completely different level of racing. And there are 4 times as many good road course racers at this level than there are in Xfinity or in trucks. So he is not going to walk in here and just look 100 times better than everybody else.
Can't wait for Connor Zilisch to dust the field on Sunday.
That is not happening. And also, too, let me also point out, when we got to Chicago, yes, Shane Van Gisbergen won that. Yeah, and I think that's having a massive effect on these odds here because the sports books are looking at Zilisch in a similar vantage point of what we saw with SVG at Chicago, where they opened him at that 12 or 14 number. And that wound up being a massive mistake on their part because he looked incredible. Obviously we had rain that day, so that definitely helped Shane, who had experience racing at street courses in supercars in wet weather, whereas Cup guys, they'd never do that. So it was almost as my buddy or our buddy Ryan from My Fantasy Race said on Twitter, like, it was a perfect storm scenario for Shane Van Gisbergen. But since then, how many Cup races has Shane won on road courses? 0. Like, I know he was close last year at Watkins battling out with Chris Buescher, but Chris Buescher bested
I'm
him.
so mad about that one still.
I mean, I had Buescher, so I was
I
very
had
happy.
SVG.
But so when you look at that, I'm going to bet Shane Van Gisbergen before I bet Connor Zilisch. And if I'm not going to bet Van Gisbergen at 5, I'm not going to bet Connor at barely longer. So in this range, the only guy, obviously, I'm a massive homer. I've already played Tyler Reddick, plus 850 over at FanDuel. Best average starting position here. No starts worse than 5th. He has 5th or better finishes in the last 3 trips to COTA, including a victory. This is the only number that I am 100% confident. Wait, let me take that back. 99.8% confident that is going to get shorter.
Yeah. We talked. We've been texting a little bit. Kind of getting this stuff set up, and I'm 100% with you. Reddick's the only one that I'm betting. And honestly, if you wanted to sit it out and
Oh,
wait to
100%.
see practice and stuff, because the names at the top are all going to be good and should be like, and you want to see what's going to separate them. We just talked like Reddick last year was in a similar spot and goes out and does what he does in qualifying. And he's like 450.
Yeah, I think he reopened at 4.
So if you can get 8, I like it. If you can get 7.5, it's solid. I think anything short of that, I'm probably just going to wait.
Yeah.
SVG and Zilisch are definitely affecting other markets. If they weren't, or at least if Zilisch wasn't, then I think Reddick would be, shorter. I like Byron a lot too. He's been really, really strong here. And obviously, we've seen him win already this year, but I'm going to be patient. And I think getting access to one of these other guys is definitely in my expectation. I just don't know
Yeah.
which one it's going to be at this point. And maybe,
Yeah, I will say I think this is definitely another. I mean, this is going to be a common theme this year because I did it last week at Atlanta, grabbing Ryan Blaney live with like 10 laps to go at 33-1 because of where he was in the field, but he was on fresh tires and he was blasting through people. This race is going to be a good opportunity to bet live because you're going to have potentially differing tire strategies, which may be a benefit or a hindrance depending on randomized cautions and the fact that we got weather coming. Like, you don't know who's going to be running fast or be on the correct tire compound when the rain gets there or when it ends. And so I think this is a decent race that if you don't see anything that you like right now, I would just wait. Wait to see who practices well, wait to see who's fast in qualifying, and also consider last year's top 5 finishers. I believe it was 4 of them all started the race inside the top 5. So
yeah, the best cars tend to separate here, which makes me a little less optimistic that we'll get good options live. But I do agree with you, especially if there is like somebody stays out, all of a sudden the guy you like goes in, gets fresh tires, there's 15 to go, maybe you get an opportunity to get a little bit better of a number. Let's talk about the next range because I think that's where I get interested. But like we talked about last week, I really want to be patient in early markets unless there's a number that's off or just seems wrong. Because like even when I got Briscoe last week at 30, and by the time we talked on Saturday it was 50, and like there's opportunities for obviously those numbers to go the other way. But if it's not, like there's these guys and then kind of the next range, and if they look good in practice, they're gonna get pushed up and you're gonna get opportunities to get up to get good numbers everywhere else. So be patient unless you see, like, I think Reddick's a good one. I think if you feel like Byron or Bell kind of do the same thing, maybe they go to 4, but we just trust Reddick so much more at road courses, especially COTA, because of the way he's qualified and the way he's performed. But let's talk Larson, Elliott, Ross, the Dinger, Tyrone Gibbs. That's kind of your next before we get to the 20-1 and beyond. I like Larson a lot this week, and I like Ross Chastain a lot this week. But at 10 and 12, what has to happen for those guys to become like 5 or 6? Like they would have to be awesome, and then like this group would have to suck, right?
Well, so yeah, I think when you're looking at the odds right now, the fact that there are so many guys within that like 14 or 15 to 1 range really tells you that the sportsbook has no idea who's going to go out there and qualify up front and also be the strongest cars in practice, which to me, like when you look at a guy like Larson, outside of Sonoma, I mean, he wasn't great at COTA. You know, he was good, but he fell off like crazy last year. And then Chase Elliott, look, everybody likes to talk about Chase Elliott's prowess on road courses and his average finish. And yes, he leads all drivers since the Gen 7 got unveiled in driver rating, but he hasn't finished better than fourth at a traditional road course since Road America in 2022. So it's not like he's a guy who's been battling up front for race wins. You know, and then when you look at COTA, like last year, he was fine. I know he had an on-track penalty. I actually watched more of the race today. He track limit penalty where you have to do a drive down, but he hasn't been great. And then also something that's hurting Chase Elliott is the fact that he's not qualifying really well at road courses either. So I mean, when you look at his opening number, unless he deviates from what recent history is telling us, this number is not going to change very much. And I think the same could be said for a guy like Larson, who, yeah, he's fast, but I don't think the book is going to make Kyle Larson 5-1 if both Shane Van Gisbergen and Tyler Reddick and say teammate William Byron are all as quick and they're starting spots 3 through 4 or 2 through 4, knowing how good those guys are expected to be as well. Like Larson maybe goes to 8 or 7. He's not going to 5 from 10. And so I think you wait in that market.
Yeah, I think that's a good shout. Trying to find a nugget that I think iFantasy Aries had, but I can't seem to.
Well, and then I got one more. AJ Allmendinger is one of my favorite guys to play at road courses. But AJ Allmendinger hasn't won in the Cup Series on a road course since 2021, I believe it is. So why are we acting as if he's a guy that even when he opened at 20 is a number that should be enticing us to go after him? And okay, I stand corrected. He won the Charlotte Roval in 2023. But when you go back and you look at traditional road courses, the last time he won on a traditional road course that does not include Daytona, Indy, or Charlotte, 2014.
Yeah, I think the biggest benefit is he's in a good car this year and not just like the jabroni backup that they put him in.
Yeah, but even before SVG got to town, he was a guy who was running like top 5. And I think those are the markets that you attack with him. And then you take him live if he shows the ability to potentially battle up front with the fastest cars.
Yeah, I had interest at 20. I don't have interest at 12 or 14. That seems aggressive.
Yeah.
The one thing I will say too is try not to let too much of the overall road course picture impact your expectations or kind of information for this week. Guys that do well at Sonoma don't necessarily do amazing at COTA and vice versa. So to like, oh, Daniel Suarez, awesome at Sonoma, so he's going to be great at COTA, right? And no, there are certain guys that tend to pop at certain places and certain guys that tend to pop at other places. So, approach it with a little bit of a grain of salt and kind of understand what you're getting into. Okay, any other bets or any discussion points in here before we go to kind of 20 and beyond?
No, I mean, I don't really have any interest in anybody that's inside that 20 mark at the moment.
The two names that jump out to me are Christopher Buescher and Alex Bowman.
Buescher sucks at qualifying. He's atrocious.
Yeah.
He's one of quite possibly the worst qualifier among all of the good road course racers. So, I mean, he puts himself behind the 8 ball immediately. And last year at Watkins Glen, did he not fire off? It was like 32 or 33-1 or something.
Yeah.
So I mean, like,
it was an egregious
not something I'm betting pre-practice.
Yeah. The name that I keep going towards, I haven't fired on it yet, but Alex Bowman has been really good here. 2nd, 3rd, and 4th in his last 3 COTA races. is a better, I think, COTA driver than people want to give him credit, or better road course driver than I think people want to give him credit for. And the only guy that really contends with Tyler Reddick in terms of, top fives, they both have 3 over their last 3 appearances. Bell and Byron both have 2, along with Ross Chastain. But he's the one where like he's it from a stats and performance ability is in a different bucket than the odds suggest he should be in.
Yeah.
And so he's the one I keep grabbing, but it's that similar conversation. It's like if he goes out and absolutely dominates practice and qualifying, what's his number? 16? Like how short can we realistically expect him to go?
Honestly, I feel like Bowman is a guy even more so than Allmendinger, just based on the equipment that he's in. If he does pull it or he's on the front row, I think it's feasible to think he's maybe 10. But
Yeah.
I'm much more comfortable betting him at 10, knowing he has a car that can stay up front from the get-go, as
Yeah.
opposed to what we've kind of gotten accustomed to seeing him do in that start further back in the top 10 or maybe in the low teens and work his way through the field because of how strong his pit crew is and just being able to manage the tires throughout the day of the race. So, he's more of a weight for me too. Like I know that 20 number is fantastic and I don't hate people getting in on it, but the changes to the track, the changes to the tire, like I want to see him practice and qualify before I fire on him.
Yeah, I'm gonna look for opportunities in like group matchups. Maybe I can get him against all the other Hendrick guys, or maybe head to heads, and grab some value. But that's kind of where I'm at with him right now. And to your point on Busher, his 4 COTA starts. Last year 20th, the year before 32nd, the year before 22nd, and the year before 28th. So I don't know what RFK does, but like they don't really appreciate qualifying and don't put any effort or seemingly put any effort into that.
Mhm.
They're so worried about race trim, that Busher is somebody that I'm keeping in the back of my head and waiting for him to qualify in kind of the teens, 20s, maybe worse, and then going, okay, give me a top 5, give me a top 10, give me a matchup, give me opportunities here to get a little bit more juice on my squeeze. Beyond them, Briscoe, McDowell, Kyle Busch, Austin Cindric, Daniel Suarez, Joey Logano, Dennis Hamlin. Anybody that you're like, when we regroup on Saturday night, that number could be 22 instead of 50. It could be 17 instead of 35. Anybody
All right.
jumping out that you're like is sort of interested in?
So he's much longer elsewhere. Believe he's 40 at BetMGM right now, but Michael McDowell is still a guy who I expect to qualify much better than what is apparently anticipated. And when you look at what he did last year here at COTA, let me remind you, he raced the entire day with 0 power steering.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm sorry, but we've all gotten, we're dealing with white gloves in our cars with amazing power steering. He was on a friggin' racetrack with no power steering. And this is a guy who just came back from 6 laps down at Atlanta to come home 13th. I mean, at Spire, I expect this team to be giving him tremendous equipment to go out there and try to qualify really well. And if he's a guy who surprises and qualifies inside the top 10, I don't see any reason why this should not get shortened to 20.
Yeah.
Maybe
I mean, there is
that
35 at FanDuel, like you said, there's longer numbers. He's just kind of in that Busher bucket where he's 27, 20, 27, 23. But maybe
that's
with the
all
new
but that's
Spire
all in like
ride.
front row equipment though.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
and I
I
know
think,
Ford has been tremendous at qualifying the last 2 years at super speedways, but at road courses they're not the greatest. So like
yeah.
I expect Spire, with their somewhat agreement with Hendrick, who qualifies pretty well here, to maybe have a little bit more speed than we're used to seeing, and him to qualify further up the field than he normally does.
So what's your number for McDowell where you're like, okay, I'll take a nibble there? It has to be at least starts with a 3, right?
Yeah, it's got to be 30 or longer for sure. I mean, obviously at the MGM price of 40, like that's
Yeah.
that's a go.
Yeah, I think 40, I think 35 at FanDuel. 33 it starts to become a little queasy for me.
But again, like on a guy like him, I think you're playing the ceiling. So obviously you're not getting crazy
Yeah.
on a
Yeah,
play
let's
like
take 100 grand a pop and call it a day.
that. Yeah, right. And then retire. Yeah.
Exactly. Exactly. I assume you're putting at least a unit down on Carson Hocevar to win.
No.
Anybody else that we haven't talked about that you think's worth? I mean, Blaney, I don't think is somebody that I'm betting in this market, but I feel like he's better at road courses and has improved at road courses, and maybe like a top 10 is in the potential card for me.
So the only thing I'll say about that with Blaney is you lose based on name recognition
Yeah.
in that market. For instance, like a top 10 play for him, honestly, at a road course should probably be in the 3 to 4 range, but it's going to be priced at like 2 to 1 because of who he is.
Right, and that's
And I'm
fair.
not playing that.
But he's also started 28th last year, finished 12th. He was second after stage 2. Obviously, the other thing you're going to be careful with the stage 2 numbers is some of the shenanigans. Like lots of people will pit before stage 2 so they can get a better spot for stage 3. So the finishing order of stage 2 versus stage 3 isn't always the same. But he was first. He was on the pole here in 2022, ended up finishing 6th though. He's somebody that, I mean, if you want to throw $5 on a 50 to 1, I don't hate that. I don't really expect him to win but
I have quite honestly, even at that number, I'm no longer interested. Even though I'm rocking the Ryan Blaney hat right now, but like he has 0 career top 5s in the Gen 7 car at road courses. So I mean, if you can't even crack the top 5,
yeah, but he was 6th 2 years ago.
whoop-de-doo.
And he
Like
got the pole, was second
that was after he started on pole.
Yeah.
Which is race manipulation essentially. Like even without the best speed, when you start on pole, it's much more difficult to pass at road courses. So he was manipulating the race there.
Yeah.
I
We've
mean,
all
based on
been
speed, he's probably like a 10th or 12th place car.
Yeah, but you don't win the race based on pure speed. Everybody knows that.
Well, I mean, you need a little bit of luck.
Carson Hocevar would have like 3 championships by now. Speed.
That's because he's the leader of Team No Lift. I mean,
Yeah, and team no lift even when you're in someone else's bumper or back fender or whatever.
look,
He's not even lifted when he's going into the stand where the flag guy is.
when Carson Hocevar wins at Las Vegas or Kansas or one of those like high speed tracks,
I'll be in the
and
bathroom throwing up.
dude, I am going to even if I'm covering the race in a work capacity, I will make sure I leave the track and throw away my credentials and then have an absolute party to just get shit faced based on the winnings of Hocevar across
Right.
the
Let's talk some bets. Austin Cindric versus Chase Briscoe. That feels like free money if you fade Briscoe. Blaney minus 105 versus Daniel Suarez.
I'm not touching either one of those. Look, so really interesting on that Austin Cindric Chase Briscoe matchup. Cindric has been really good at qualifying here, so I think that's an opportunity to buy in on Cindric if you could get the correct price somewhere early, and then go somewhere else if they reopen this matchup, and then buy the other side of Chase Briscoe. Although I do expect the Toyotas to qualify well, in Briscoe, when he first got to the Cup Series, was somebody that we looked at as a potential road course maven. Based on what he did in Xfinity. So, I don't really, it's a market that I'm not playing myself, but I do think that based on historical data, Cindric is probably going to qualify better, even with Briscoe and better equipment. And you might have the opportunity to buy back on the Briscoe side post qualifying.
Yeah. I did want to note our friends offshore have released their top 10 odds, and Blaney is 220, Logano's 250.
So they actually priced them properly, somewhat.
Well, that's about what you said it was going to be, and I think you're right. So, yeah, there's not a lot of value there. Let me tell you, Zilisch is minus 275, Reddick minus 275.
That's ridiculous. Well,
Yeah.
that's not too ridiculous, quite honestly.
Yeah, well, it's a lot more predictable.
Yeah.
The one that was jumping out to me, I do like Logano versus Hamlin. Don't love minus 115 on either side, but I think
Yeah.
Logano wins that more often than not, right? You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to go over to our friends over at Win the Race, which, by the way, we are powered by Win the Race with all the amazing tools. And we can throw it into their head-to-head simulator, and it gives you what the fair market value of that bet should be. And let's see if we're on. Yeah, so it does have Logano winning more than 52% of the time, but it says the fair market value should be about 112. So based on that, it's probably a good bet to kind of avoid at this point. But I do feel like Logano over Hamlin is a nice bet. The other thing
Man,
go ahead.
I've just neither of them sparks optimism in me at road courses.
Oh, for sure.
The only thing I will say, okay, so about like Denny, for instance, you know how sometimes some drivers they may kind of look past a certain track because of what the tracks that are upcoming.
Mhm.
This might be a look ahead situation for a guy like Denny, who after this week we go to Phoenix, where he's got to improve. You have to be strong there in order to actually be somebody considered a championship contender. And then we go to Vegas.
Yep.
And then we got Miami, all tracks that Denny is much better at than here at the road course. So Denny might be in just survive and advance.
I mean, you could say the same thing about Logano.
Yeah, but I think Joey is like, he's too competitive for that. Denny is too analytical is not the correct word, but you know what I mean? Like, I think he looks at it.
Are you calling Denny soft?
No, he's not soft, but he looks at it more mathematically. Whereas Logano is so competitive, he tries to win everywhere.
Would you say Logano's actions are detrimental?
To himself sometimes, for sure. Yeah, that was a great,
No,
little entrance there.
Carson Hosoar's actions are detrimental to everyone else but himself.
Oh my gosh.
All right, let's look at the rest of this. So we both have Reddick at this point. Is there anything else like we want to like get some action on? Like I want to fire some bets, but I'm also not going to get over my skis on a Tuesday.
Yeah.
Like Byron plus 110 like some of these SVG matchups are compelling, but SVG could go out and dust the field and make me look real stupid for fading him.
Yeah, I'm not touching SVG at this time. I know there are some plus money plays out there. As you see on here, you got Byron, and I think Larson could be had at plus money against him. And then there's a couple of nice ones over at in Vegas at Superbook that I was eyeing, but it's just so hard to fade him pre-practice because I mean the guy is in the sport for these particular tracks. I just it's hard to go against him there. The one before we even look at these, there is a matchup over at Bet365 that I'm going to play. Michael McDowell minus 115 over Daniel Suarez.
Interesting. Let me pull that up on the head-to-head tool and see if we got some value there. So that I'll just say that our friends over at Win the Race do not like that bet. They would prefer
and that's the thing is
Suarez.
value some places, maybe not a value for other people. Like I look at this completely different than what the analytics. And let me also say, I also went against models and projections pretty much across the board in the industry last week in going with Spire over Front Row Motorsports.
Yeah. Well, and that's hard to do because of the seat changes and stuff. But yeah, it's a good double check, and if you don't necessarily if you don't necessarily like agree and you still want to fire, obviously fire away, but oof. Yeah. I'm gonna fire on Ross Chastain plus 130 over William Byron.
Woo!
Probably not like the smartest bet, but if I was getting plus 130 on the other side, I would take that too. I think these guys are very similar. I think they both have, strong results. As I mentioned, Byron has a win here and 2 top fives. Chastain, non coincidentally, has a win and 2 top fives. Their driver rating is basically the same. And I'm getting plus 130 to do it. So it's, Byron's scary because he's so consistent and so reliable. But I'm going to take the value and hope that when we're talking, on Saturday night, that it's similar-ish, or it's like they're basically like even or minus 115 on either side, and then I'd be happy with that. You can
I
get
mean,
Reddick.
I will say, I think there's an argument to be made that William Byron has been the best car here each of the last 2 years.
I know it's terrifying. I'm getting in front of a moving vehicle, but I'm getting plus 130 to do it. And as a person who loves scrounging up that value, I'm not gonna say no. You can get Larson at plus 160. It's SVG. You can get Logano at plus 110 versus Hamlin. I was talking about taking it at minus 115. I'm taking that.
Oh my gosh.
Um,
Kyle's losing it, folks. He's already
no,
losing.
I'm good. I'm good. I'm a value hound. I'm gonna suck it up. Let's go. Plus 110 instead of minus 115.
Look,
Logano is like he grabs track position, he holds on to it. Do I think he's gonna win the race? Absolutely not. But could he get 5th, 6th, 7th and be 10 spots ahead of Denny? Absolutely.
I mean,
Plus money?
the problem though is like, look, if we made money based on CLV, like we'd all be millionaires. I
Sure.
mean, the
But
bet
over
still
the
has to
long
cash.
haul, and Wormy will tell you this, if you're consistently getting CLV, you're gonna make money more than you're not.
That's
Just like
true.
you want to bet Kyle Busch right now at plus 110, and then when Chris Buescher sucks in qualifying, and that number flips, you bet the other side at plus 110, and you do what Brian did all last year, and you freaking middle that stuff, and
Yeah,
then
you arb the shit out
yeah,
of.
and then you make your 20% or 10% or whatever it is, and you call it
Sometimes
a
it's
day.
a nickel. Like, yeah,
Yeah.
it's tiny, but it adds up for sure.
Something to think about.
I will say, I do think that grabbing Logano at plus money against Hamlin is a decent play because I don't think Denny's even not gonna he's not even gonna try to tell you that he's good at road courses.
No.
So, I actually like that play a little bit. And then I don't mind maybe playing a little bit on Larson at plus 160 just because I think there is a chance that maybe Larson goes out and looks better than maybe what we expect. And then this to me is my biggest question mark of the week. And it's the reason why I don't have much exposure on the Trackhouse side outside of a much longer Zilisch line that I got today than what's currently posted in the other markets. Which of those guys or which two of those guys gets the better equipment?
Yeah.
They're fielding 4 cars, Trackhouse. And like, this is a one-off for Zilisch. So, I mean, there's no other races currently scheduled for him with Trackhouse.
Yeah.
And if they don't have any designs of maybe putting him into another car at another road course, I could see them giving him the top ride and then maybe going with Chastain as the second best ride, knowing that this is Chastain's best road course and that SVG will excel at, say, Chicago and maybe Mexico City, where he's stronger at street racing. And then Suarez gets it. Like, there's a lot going on in that one stable.
I think it's a phenomenal point. And I think we even talked about this with Wormy, I think maybe in the pre-race stuff we're doing or before the season. He SVGs can tend to get a little bit more out of the car. Like he doesn't need the best car to win.
Exactly.
So I could see them giving Zilisch the best car, knowing that they want to make him a part of their future.
Yep.
And that future could start as early
And
as this
maybe
year.
next year. I mean, think about it.
I mean, they could make a change before the year even ends. But
Oh man, that would be
poor
brutal.
Daniel Suarez. But I think
Yeah.
he'll find a ride next year. It'll just be somewhere else. Let's go. So yeah, the top 10 market sucks. The one thing I will say is like Blaney's 150 here, and I could get him at 220, which I don't.
Still garbage line in my
Yeah,
opinion.
no, it's awful. It's awful. Any other bets that we should consider? Do we have winning team Trackhouse at 2-1, Hendrick at 230, JGR?
I think there's a decent no matter what the Chevy price is, like winning manufacturer.
Mm-hmm.
I know it's priced up to heaven right now. I think the shortest I saw it is like minus 200. Yeah, minus 220. I mean, you're giving yourself the 3 Trackhouse guys: Kyle Larson, Chase Elliott, William Byron, Kyle Busch, Michael
AJ
McDowell,
Allmendinger, Ross Chastain,
AJ
Alex
Allmendinger.
Bowman.
Like, you're getting a tremendous amount of people, and then you can come back and play Bell, Reddick, and then
Yeah, honestly, if you wanted to bet Reddick and bet Chevy to win and just make that all of your bets for the week, that I don't think that's horrible.
yeah, like I mean, because from the Ford camp, who outside of Chris Buescher now is anybody that we're worried about?
Yeah. Yeah. And like Bowman at 12-1, I think is interesting at Top Chevy, but like he's 20 to win the race.
And you have to think if he's going to be the top Chevy, he's probably finishing.
Yeah. See, Buescher's
third or
plus
better.
180 to be the top Ford. I don't love that. I think he'll be good, but like I think that number will be better. I don't know. Yeah, I mean, the Fords are gross. Like
The fact that Cole Custer is priced at 14-1 to be the top of any manufacturer just tells you all you need to know about.
if you're
Ford.
not betting Buescher, who are you betting? Are you betting anyone? And if that's the case, should we be betting Buescher even if it's plus 180?
Honestly, I would probably go with, this is freaking disgusting, but you're not going to see Logano at 6-1 top Ford.
I think honestly Logano and Blaney are both compelling.
Yeah, just based on overall speed.
Because they could get like 5th or 6th or 7th, and that could be fine.
Dude, they could finish probably 10th and be the top Ford this week.
Is there any value at Toyota? I think it's obviously Reddick, Bell. It kind of falls off. See, I'd much rather bet Reddick at plus 180 than Buescher at plus 180, even if with Bell.
Oh, yeah, it's a much smaller. Well, the only thing I will say about that, though, is that in terms of just overall skill level at road courses, Buescher is much better than everybody else, but he's probably going to be starting behind 4 to 5 of those guys.
Yeah, so if you want Buescher, I think you wait on that market.
Yes. Yeah, but Buescher lines are weights, for sure.
Yeah. Anything else you want to look at?
It's disgusting, but yeah, I thought for sure I was going to be over here with an Uzi firing off all sorts of bets, but there's just not a ton that I'm.
Okay, well, let's recap the bets. Let's give the people our thoughts before we get out of here. We don't need that. I already took care of it. Good job. Okay, we have 5 total bets. Reddick 850 for both of us, so he's going to end up like 35th. I have Ross over Byron just because of the plus 130. I think they're both very similar. Ross is probably a little more of a risk, so I get why the market moved that way, but I think it's gone too far. And then I'm taking Logano with Denny. I think they're both very similar. That's not bet 366. That is bet 365. At plus money too. So just grabbing both of those, hoping that when we talk on Saturday, the numbers have flipped the other way, or at least somewhat close. And I'll be happy to have that. Brian has Reddick, and then he has Michael McDowell over Daniel Suarez. So, kind of putting a pin in the Trackhouse conversation where I think no matter which way you kind of organize it, Daniel's probably going to be 4th. Whether you put Ross or Zilisch or SVG 1, 2, 3, it's kind of up in the air. But yeah, so I think that's a good bet.
Well, and then like that wasn't even something that I even considered. It was more so just based on my own observations of who I'd rather have on a road course.
Yeah.
But now that you even add that aspect into it, that I don't think there's a question that Daniel Suarez has he's fourth on the totem pole in terms of attention getting this week for Trackhouse, whereas McDowell is the leader of the Spire camp, and he has a great history at road courses to begin with.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, well, I appreciate everyone riding with us for this one and everyone being patient and understanding with my voice. Hopefully, by the time we talk on Saturday, I sound much, much better and back to kind of my old ways. Brian and I will be tweeting stuff out if we see stuff. So make sure you're following both of us on Twitter, as well as on our show account. We also have an Instagram, AOP Podcast, where we share stuff. So make sure you're following us there. We'll try and get Grid Rival picks out to you, both in the
Don't
newsletter.
forget Grid Rival.
Yes.
100% deposit match up to $100 by using AOP 25. Get in on these contests. Sometimes there's an opportunity to play better numbers than what are even available at the books. So,
Yep. And if you don't want to put money in there and you want to just jump into our free season-long contest where we will have prizes at the end, hop in. Free to enter. Doesn't cost you a thing. Link is in the description. And you will get points based on the last place. So it's kind of nice to hop along. I was doing great after Daytona, and now I'm like mid-pack after Atlanta, but that's okay. We still have a long race, like 34 more races. So a lot of time to score points. It's really fun. You pick drivers, use them up for up to 3 races. I was feeling really good going into Atlanta because I had all this extra money because all of my drivers had done so well, but they all sucked. So it was really, really fun. But that's Brian Twining. I'm Kyle Robert. Enjoy the rest of your week. Check out Win the Race. It's a good time to get in. You can do a monthly package. You get some great races, including this week and Phoenix and Vegas. So those are really fun races to bet. A lot more value, and then you obviously get the DFS simulator and the Discord, which is the most fun part. Community of really smart people talking about cars, and they do truck racing, they do Xfinity. So even though we don't necessarily cover a lot of that, there will be people there to help you out, or at least just give you a driver to sweat if you want to throw a couple shekels for some Friday night or Saturday night fun. That's Brian Twining. I'm Kyle Robert. Enjoy the rest of your week, and we'll talk to you next time.